Hey everybody, it is Prince's Friend, and I am back with another review. This week is going a little bit slower because I'm helping my mom move and doing all craziness this week, and holidays are coming up, but we're trucking through and getting these reviews out. Just as a reminder, if you like awesome shirts like this, check out our Redbubble store, links down in the description. So today's review is for an album by one of my favorite bands, The Cure, and it is their album Disintegration. It was released on May 2nd of 1989. And The Cure is a UK band that's been around since the early 80s. And this was actually The Cure's 8th album. But this was the first one that I was introduced to, which is why I think it's actually a really good first for you guys as well, if you haven't had the chance to check them out before. And also, as Kyle from South Park says, Disintegration is the best album ever! So one of the biggest things about The Cure is that they are kind of really well known for their goth aesthetics and their depressing music and all of that. They're kind of one of the forefathers of the goth movement, along with Susie and the Banshees and Morrissey and a few others. But this is one of the gloomiest albums ever, with a little bit of extra depression sprinkled right on top. The reason for this is because The Cure had a lot of pop success with their album before this called Kiss Me, Kiss Me, Kiss Me, and Robert Smith, who is the brains behind the group, he really kind of wanted to fight against that. On top of that pop sentiment, he was also turning 30 and was a little depressed about that. It's actually a common thread in a lot of the different Cure songs where he kind of obsesses about age and death and how close he is to it because he keeps getting older. But with this album, he started experimenting with hallucinogens, and he produced an album that he was sure would turn everybody away. All the people who were just with The Cure for the pop fad, he was just like, those people need to go. So the album ended up selling more than 3 million copies, which is a great number, and I believe it ended up being one of their best-selling albums ever. The album ended up charting at number 3 in the UK, again they're a UK band, number 12 in the US, produced a bunch of hits, Lovesong being the biggest and most well-known song from this album, but we'll get to that one in a minute. The interesting thing about this album is that when the reviews were coming out, they were mostly gushing, and they talked about how The Cure was amazing, and this was, a great return to form, and all of that, but then the reviews were all 3 and 3.5s, and it was really kind of meh. Since then, people have realized how great this album is, and the reviews are much higher. I get it though, like it was pretty much like Prince's Around the World in a Day, where he had so much success with Purple Rain that he was just like, we kind of need to weed out what people are coming to me to expect. He was like, I'm not going to be Purple Rain forever. Same thing with Robert Smith. Kiss Me, Kiss Me, Kiss Me was great, but that is not the only thing that I want to be known for, so here's something completely different than that. And I applaud that. The Cure was one of those bands that kind of always attracted me, though, as soon as I started to get into it, because Robert Smith is basically the Prince of goth, in my opinion. He has a band, The Cure, but the members rotate in and out, except for his bassist Simon, who was with him for a very, very long time, but even he's gone now. But really, every album was him at the center. He was the creative voice. He was the one calling the shots. So if you've never listened to The Cure, I think you're in for a treat, and I think you're going to have a lot of fun with this. So let's get into those tracks. Track crashes in literally. The first sound mimics the sound of crashing glass and enters a real morose and slow beat that really kind of builds as Robert Smith layers the guitar and then the beat and then the organs and then finally his vocals to really start this album off right. Of the 5-minute track, the lyrics themselves are actually a really small section of this song. It is a lot of instrumentality. It's instead a song for setting the tone for the rest of the album, and I think it does that wonderfully. So Pictures of You was one of the hits from Disintegration. It was the fourth single and the final single that was released almost an entire year after the album came out. According to Smith, he wrote it after he had a fire in his home, and the sadness that he felt rummaging through the remains and finding the pictures of his wife. It carries the same melancholy from the first track, since again Robert Smith was going for as depressing an album as possible here. This isn't one of my favorite tracks on the album, but it did get to number 27 in the UK, 71 in the US. Respectable numbers.
I'm running out of time. I'm out of step and closing down. Never sleep for wanting hours, the empty hours of grief. And you
now this track is cool because the drums take a much bigger role in the sound of the track. They're thumping along with the organs in the back, really making this song sound very aggressive. And when you're listening to it, you're just like, what's gonna happen here? Lyrically, this is kind of the ultimate I'm getting old song, as he basically starts talking about how it's almost closing time for him. It's similar to Plainsong in that there's a long lead-in, and then there's a small part of lyrics, and then the song continues for a bit at the end with just instruments. And that's actually the thing that you don't see a lot of bands do nowadays, honestly. Most bands are trying to fill in as much, throw in as many, catchy choruses and whatnot as they can, and that's not really what this album was about. He wants you to feel his pain, and he is spectacular at that. Actually one of my favorite love songs, mostly because it's one of those love songs that turns the idea of a love song on its head. It's not I love you darling and this is because you're so wonderful and all that stuff. It's more of a like I love you because you don't make me think about death as much. It's a nice enough sentiment, but yeah, it's kind of creepy, when it's phrased that way. It's crazy though, because this song has actually been covered a bunch of times. I think the biggest ones were the one from 311 and also one that Adele did on her 21 album. The song reached number 1 on the alternative charts and number 59 on the Hot 100, so good showing on the boards. When people think of The Cure, they think of Lovesong usually. This one and Friday I'm in Love, but that's a whole other album. This song is really great though. Simple, it's catchy. I have a feeling that this was probably the last song that was put on the album because the record label probably said, we need something that's a little bit catchier, this album isn't gonna sell, because literally nothing else on the album sounds this poppy.
I'm so glad you came, I'm so glad you remember to see how it ended, our last dance together, expectant to punctual but prettier than ever.
So I'm actually really in love with the beat for Last Dance because it kind of dances around on the drum set, which is kind of part of what I like about it. When the guitar comes in, you can tell by the sound that we're back to the sadness that Robert Smith was feeling when he was writing the album. This song is about a final meeting with someone that you love, but you know that it's doomed to fail. And this is your last dance with them. Interestingly enough, this was actually a bonus track that you got on the CD and was not part of the original vinyl pressing. This song doesn't have a chorus, something that actually a lot of songs on this album share, and that's something that you'll be paying attention to as we go along here. But it's a great showing for The Cure.
I realize you're flying, the Spider-Man is having me for dinner tonight.
This was, I believe, the first song that I ever heard from The Cure before I ever picked up an album or anything. I remember my friend was like, watch this video. And I also remember that it really didn't sell me on the band at first. I think it's a song about a monster who kind of lives in your dreams, and he's called the Spider-Man, and he comes to eat you. And if you dig a little bit deeper, there's a lot of tones of like childhood nightmares even abuse, things like that in the song. The thing about this song is that it's actually good alone, but as part of Disintegration as a whole, it's a really amazing part of the overall tapestry that Smith was creating with the album. So I've actually come to love this song a lot more over the years, but it's still not like my very favorite song on the album. So Fascination Street is the most rocking track on the album. It's got a great bass line and a really good beat, and an interesting guitar arrangement. America agreed and actually gave the band their first #1 from the album on Billboard's modern rock charts. The lyrics are indiscernible though, and kind of jump around everywhere, because I'm pretty sure that Fascination Street is another name for using fancy hallucinogens. It's kind of a trippy song, but also a much needed escape from the low and depressingness. This was more of an upbeat kind of rocker song, so I think it was a really good addition to the album.
Strangle me, entangle me in hopelessness, and prayers for rain, prayers for rain, prayers for rain, prayers for rain.
But then we quickly return to depressing once more with Prayers for Rain. This song uses rain as a metaphor for hope and enthusiasm and the love of life. Thus, Robert Smith is praying that that rain will come to him, even though it never does. Really sad, right? It's very well put together song, though. The beat drives the song mostly, and the guitar adds accents, and then there's a really cool kind of orchestral arrangement, which I'm sure is just keyboards, that comes at the end of each verse, because again, no chorus on this song. And I think it does a really good job kind of drawing any happiness from you. You're likely in tears by this point if you're listening to the album as a whole and like throwing yourself into it. But it's a really beautiful song though.
I don't see, I don't feel the tightly hold of silently in my hands for my fading eyes, in my eyes your smile.
So The Same Deep Water as You is the longest song on the album at just under 9.5 minutes. This song actually plays off of Prayers for Rain quite a bit, because he's in a relationship where she is deep in love with him, thus surrounded by the water, the hope, the love that he so desperately wants for himself. But he just can't dive in. From the lyrics, he says, "Swimming in the same deep water as you is hard." So he just has to say goodbye to her because she loves him so much, and he's just incapable of reaching that same plateau. Another wonderfully sweet yet very depressing song.
I never said I'd stay to the end, I leave you babies, hoping for frequency, screaming like this, hope of the secrecy, screaming over and over, leaving you photographs, pictures of trick, stains on.
So Disintegration is obviously the title track of the album, and it is my all-time favorite Cure song on this album. It opens again with the sound of breaking glass, and to me that signifies that he kind of broke into himself and he started this deep reflection that this album actually started, and now he's breaking back out and he's seeing that the world kind of is as terrible as he thought it was. It's about a sense of falling apart and kind of wanting to destroy everything that you have and leave it all behind. The poetry in the lyrics is amazing, and the song itself builds and builds and builds until you just can't help but just scream along with Robert Smith and revel in his sadness. I'd say that it was basically the perfect Cure song at the time, though he's actually come out with a couple of other songs that are even better since then, but this one is an amazing song.
Just one more walk away, I'll leave everything with just nothing to do. And I forget how to move, and my mouth is as dry, and my eyes are busting.
So when this album was released on CD, they gave us 2 additional tracks. One of them was The Last Dance. I mentioned that one already, and that's a pretty damn good song. The other is Homesick, which is not a song that you want coming after Disintegration. Remember, Disintegration is the track that I just said was one of the best Cure songs at the time. But Homesick is not a bad song. It's just that I would have loved to have had it mixed in with the rest of the album, just like how Last Dance was, because it really doesn't stand up to the song that just came before it. I would have ended the album on Disintegration, but that's just me. The song itself is good. It's actually about parting ways and leaving what you feel is home, and you know that you can never return, so now you're homesick because of it. But yeah, I'm iffy on this song, mostly due to placement.
Hopelessly drift in the eyes of the ghost again, down on my knees and my hands in the air again, pushing my face in the memory of you again, and I never know if it's real.
And then we get to the final track, which Robert Smith actually said was so depressing that he couldn't even name it. And it's a song about all the unspoken things in a relationship, all the sorries that he had wanted to say to the woman that he has left here at the end of the album, but, he never did. For me, it doesn't have that same sadness, but I can understand from his point of view, like, this was his experience. So it definitely makes sense that it would be very sad for him. I would probably ended the album on Disintegration, I'll say that again, because I think it's the better song, but I get why this is the ender, because all of the depression and the sadness and the terribleness that he felt in Disintegration, this is the song where now he's left to think about everything that he's lost because he couldn't escape his own mind, and that is really kind of what depression is in a nutshell. So it is still a really good album ender. So again, if this is your first intro to The Cure, and it's not your cup of tea, you may even still like some of their more poppy stuff, so I would still give them a shot. Reach out and see if some of the other Cure stuff might be for you. But if you liked Disintegration and the samples that I've had here in the review, you are in for a world of beauty and sadness and joy and everything. Robert Smith has gone on to make some amazing albums. Their last album was in 2008. They released a live album in 2011, so they're still kicking, and I'm expecting another album here any moment, I'm hoping. But for me, Disintegration, 5 out of 5, easy. Despite me not liking Homesick all that much, the rest of the album is a masterpiece from The Cure. But what did you guys think of Disintegration? Let me know down in the comments. While you're at it, don't forget to check us out on social media, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and Patreon at patreon.com/princessfriend. Check out the Redbubble store, and may you live to see the dawn.